So basically, every 20 years, according to the Constitution, you have this referendum placed on the ballot. It reads, shall there be a convention to revise the Constitution and amend the same? That referendum will appear on the ballot in November 7th, and it will appear on the back of the ballot, along with, in Columbia County, there are 4 measures on the ballot. 3 of them have to do with the state constitution. So you can flip to the next slide. This is a sample ballot from the Columbia County Board of Elections. So the Constitutional Convention is proposal 1, a question. As I said, shall there be a convention to revise the Constitution and amend the same? Simple yes or no answer. And then there's the proposal 2, proposal 3, which are other amendments to the Constitution. I'll talk about those briefly at the end. And then the 4th one is a local proposal, which I won't talk about at all, because I'm actually from Albany. I don't know about the Hudson Library and what it's about. So next slide, please. Okay, so there are 2 general ways that you can revise the Constitution. One is by legislation, which we have amended the Constitution through legislation, but I think it's 225 times now. And the amendment process through the legislature is anyone in the Assembly or the Senate can propose a bill, an amendment. It passes both houses by a simple majority twice. It goes to the people for a referendum. And so that second and third ballot item, the amendments, those both went through the Assembly and the Senate twice. And the governor isn't involved in the process. He doesn't have veto power on them at all. And so that's the general way that the Constitution is amended most of the time. And the second is by convention, which I already discussed. So if you vote no on the convention, then you have to amend the Constitution through the legislative process. Though a lot of the things that people want to get through the Constitutional Convention, actually, you don't need amendments. A lot of the stuff they talk about is simple legislation that's already sitting in a committee somewhere. So you don't actually need amendments to do most of the things that people want to do in the convention. But then if you vote yes on the convention, next slide please. So if you vote yes, then we go into this long, about 2-year process. So if you vote yes, then you have to elect delegates. There are 204 delegates to the Constitutional Convention. Every state Senate district gets 3. There are 63 state Senate districts, so that's your 189. Then you also have 15 people who are elected statewide. So you have 204 extra elections you have to run in 2018, in addition to the governor and the attorney general and the Congress and the Assembly and all the other big races. So, and those people are elected the same way any other politician is elected. You have to petition, you have to collect signatures to get on the ballot. You go through your primary election, you go through your general election. So you still need campaign managers, you need field directors, you can actually run campaigns just like anyone else. And then those delegates are elected in November 2018. And, next slide. And then once you elect the delegates in 2019, that's when your convention would actually occur. And the convention would be scheduled April to September. That's when it's supposed to be held, though technically the convention can actually run as long as the delegates decide that it should run. The convention gets to write their own rules, how they operate, elect their own officers within the convention, and if they decide they can't get it done in 6 months, they can extend it if they like. But if all goes well, then they finish their convention process in September 2019, and then whatever they come up with goes on the ballot in November 2019. Now, one of the issues is that we don't actually know what would be displayed on the ballot. So, in 1967, which was the last time they had a convention, they just did this one sort of take it or leave it package, right? And people said, okay, we don't really want to just take everything in here, and they rejected everything outright. In 1938, which was the last time there was actually a successful convention, what they did was they put bullet points on there. And people voted yes on 6 of the bullet points and no on 3 of them. So, we don't know how anything would be displayed on the ballot until the convention completes. The convention gets to tell you how it appears in the ballot, period. And that's one concern. A lot of people don't like the idea of just having a big take it or leave it package. It would be nice if they did bullet points, like the 2 amendments on the ballot this year. They're discrete amendments. Here's one amendment about pension forfeiture for people convicted of felonies. Here's another one about creating a land bank. Those are discrete items that people can look at and understand. But the New York State Constitution is 50,000 words. And if you do a whole take it or leave it thing, I don't know many people who are going to take the time to actually read the entire Constitution to figure out what was actually changed. And that's it's a lot harder if they don't do the bullet points. Okay, so why you should vote no? Like I said, the Constitutional Convention, the Constitution has already been amended 225 times. We have 2 amendments on the ballot this year, so we seem to be able to get some things passed once in a while. And next slide. So here's sort of my functional analysis from the perspective of running a campaign. Campaigns take people, they take money, they take volunteers, and in upstate New York, it might be different downstate, I don't know. I only run campaigns in upstate because I live in Albany. But I never have enough volunteers, we never have enough money, we never have enough campaign staff. How are we supposed to run 204 more campaigns? I can't run 204 more campaigns with the volunteers I know I have in upstate New York. So, some campaign is going to suffer. Some people want to take back particular congressional seats or particular state senate seats. Well, I can't run an extra 204 campaigns with the staff that I know is available. So that's at least in upstate New York. New York City might be a different animal, but like Johnny said, I'm managing the campaign for county executive in Rensselaer County right now. I couldn't find a field director who had actually worked in the county before. So, upstate New York, it's hard to run campaigns this way. And a lot of people are concerned with, Johnny again mentioned, a lot of money flowing into these campaigns. Well, from just the basic analysis of the finances, 90 to 95% of campaigns are won by the candidate with the most money. And a lot of people who are in favor of the convention say that, well, we can have this people's convention, we can elect people, and we can create this mass movement to elect delegates we want. But the reality is that, largely in the era of Citizens United, the people aren't going to be the people with the money to spend. It's going to be, next slide, this guy. I thought this was just a funny cartoon, so I watched this cartoon when I was younger. But anyway, 90 to 95% of campaigns are won by the person with the most money. And you look across a lot of the political campaigns by Senate district in upstate New York, it's not individual donors who are giving money. A lot of campaigns, I looked at the state senator over in Delaware County, and 9 of their top 10 donors were corporate PACs. Rensselaer County, we have Marcion. We've got this LLC loophole in New York, and you had I think 5 of the top 10 donors were a real estate developer and an LLC that he owned or that his friends owned. So it's not really individual people who are actually going to be able to fund these campaigns. So that's one of the major concerns from a functional perspective of the practicality of running these campaigns. All right, next slide. And next slide, I sort of already talked about that. So more of why you should vote no, and I think that some of our other speakers will talk more about these in more detail, but a lot of the protections are already in the Constitution. We already have a fairly decent Constitution as other states go. We have these forever wild protections, we've got collective bargaining, pensions, home rule, the right to community self-governance. One of our speakers generously provided some no fracking, vote no signs. Well, a lot of the the bans on fracking or pipelines and such, courts uphold in New York because this home rule protection exists. You know, towns and municipalities are allowed to decide what happens in their towns by creating, by zoning and planning. And so home rule is one of those things that is very important. Free public education, back in 1967, even way back in 1967 at the last convention, there were amendments proposed that weren't approved, obviously, since nothing in that convention was approved, but that would have allowed public money to go to private schools. And today we have this battle over charter schools in New York, potentially moving money from public schools to private schools. So this is some sort of public education portion. You know, we know way back in 1967 that was a question that already existed. And then there are a lot of protections for public and social welfare programs as well. All right, so I think that's the end of my next slide. So here are a few organizations that want you to vote no. A couple of unions I put up there. Capital NIPAN is the organization I chair in Albany, and Indivisible CD19 New York, which is our local group who is hosting this. And also the other organizations that are represented by all of our speakers. So, that's it for the Constitution. I'm going to go over very briefly the other two amendments on the ballot. So, next slide. So this is just a blow-up of your ballot. This is exactly what will appear on your ballot in Columbia County. So this is an amendment on pension forfeiture by public officers, allowing the complete or partial forfeiture of public officer pensions if he or she is convicted of a certain type of felony. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you're convicted of a felony related to doing your job as a public officer, then the judge can decide to take away your pension, right? And the next slide is how do you define a public officer? And it's pretty self-explanatory. If you're an elected official, if you're appointed by the governor to an office of public trust, you know, you've got judges, you've got town, city, village managers, mayors, heads of municipal departments, judges, you know, legislators. It's pretty self-explanatory. You know, if it's somebody who is in a position of public trust, whether elected or appointed in a government entity, that's basically what a public officer is. And the second amendment has to do with creation of a land bank and forest preserves, and it's authorizing the creation of up to 250 acres of forest preserve land eligible for use by towns, villages, and counties. The purpose of that, if you flip to the next slide, because we do have the forever wild provisions, especially in the Adirondacks, I know this is a huge issue, that you know you have trouble expanding broadband or putting in municipal utilities because you can't bury municipal utilities even in public right-of-ways. So this allows for putting in, within the right-of-ways that already exist for roads, you can put in water, sewer, electricity, telephone, and internet infrastructure within the public right-of-way that already exists. And that would be offset by land that was taken out of this extra land bank. So the legislature would buy extra land to be put in the forest preserve, and as a town, if a town took some out to put in infrastructure, it would be removed. You have extra land added by that land bank to the forest preserve from that land bank. And the legislation specifically outlines the uses you're allowed to have for the land in the land bank, and it's specifically, you know, bridges, utilities. They even had to put in this rather peculiar language that they would allow a guy wire to support existing utility poles, because apparently you're not allowed to put those up right now. And it seems like common sense that if you have a utility pole, you should be allowed to put up a guy wire to keep it standing up. And so I will turn it over to Connor from Environmental Advocates to talk about his organization's perspective.